Hi everyone, I'm Sandy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have my February reading wrap up for you. I had a very successful reading month in the month of February, primarily because I was just so incredibly busy and had a lot of, but still had a lot of downtime. I posted a video on Saturday about what's been going on. So if you want to go watch that video, you can learn a little bit more. But I had a lot of time sitting and waiting in various places, and I kept myself busy by reading in the month, which is incredible. Not every book was a great book, unfortunately. The 1001 list, oh, those books this month were not my favorite, but I will go through all of those as well as some of my other ones. But yeah, it was a very interesting reading month. So to start, let's go ahead and talk about the 1001 book countdown, which is my passion project I started a few years ago. Actually, I've been reading on that list for a number of years. I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list and slowly making my way through them. It is taking years, and I anticipate it will continue to take me years to make it through the rest of those books, but I do love it quite a bit. So hopefully you'll consider giving me a subscribe and sticking around and seeing how long it takes me to make more progress on it. I'm rapidly approaching 200 books and starting my channel. That is incredible. But what we'll do right now is go ahead and put up the numbers for you. At the end of January, I stopped at 825, which is my overall number, and 47. Every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books that I want to try and focus on in the year. It helps me to have a goal that looks like I can get to 0 in the year. I've never made it to 0. I've come close, but I've never quite made it. So that's what that number represents, 47. Editing Sandy here. I didn't actually say in my original video what number I ended up at. I don't know what I was thinking when I recorded this, but I actually ended up at 821 books left on the overall 1001 list. And for my 2024, I'm currently at 44. Now, this was filmed prior to my most recent 1001 book countdown, so those books are not included in these numbers, but that's where I sat at the end of February. If I look at the number of weeks that I've had so far in the year, I'm trying to read one book per week. Should have read between 8 and 9, and I am right at 9. That's amazing as well. So still right on track in February. Last year, I was already behind at this time. So yeah. And as promised, I am going to continue doing the rankings of the books, and then I will share at the end of the year an overall ranking of all the books that I read that year. So yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited about doing it. I'm keeping track on a shelf over here, so I'm ranking them as I go and kind of trying to put them in order, and we'll see how it goes. But as I'm sure this will be no surprise to anyone, the book that is at the bottom is going to be The Book of Laughter and Forgetting by Milan Kundera. I didn't finish this. I DNF'd it. I will never pick this book up, and I probably will never pick up another book by Kundera. No surprise there. The next book, so the second to the last book, would have to be Waiting for the Barbarians by J.M. Coetzee. This was not a horrible book, but you know, I'm just coming to the realization that this is another author that I just don't enjoy that much. This one had some redeeming qualities of it. I did like a warden essentially that was managing this prison, but for the most part, yeah, the third from the bottom or second from the bottom makes sense. The second from the top will end up being Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. I did this as a buddy read with Priscilla at the Evening Reader, Gemma from Gemma Books, and Dia from Novel Idea, and only 2 of us finished. So it was not very well received. I liked components of this book quite a bit, but overall it did end up in the second spot, but it kind of shows you that this month was not the strongest month of reads. The last book that I have is, of course, my book club pick, The Princess of Cleves. It was by far the strongest book that I had read in the month of February for the 1001 book club. So that's where we ended up with the ranking. I had one other book, A House in the Uplands, which I read it at the end of February, but I haven't included it in a 1001 countdown video yet. It'll be in March's recap. So yeah. That's 1001 list. So what else did I end up reading? I had for my longest on my TBR project, I ended up reading this one, Life After Life, but with by Kate Atkinson. I read this with Kristen over at Enter the Book. This is my first Atkinson. I've never read one of her books before, and there were components of this book as well that I really, really enjoyed. You basically are having the same character who is living kind of the same life over and over again with something slightly changing. But at times it seems like she's aware and can change those things, and then at times she's not aware. Like I was expecting her to become more and more aware as the time went on. I also was not expecting this to be a World War II story, of a shock. So I had, and all of the things that I had heard about this book, that was never something that was talked about. And so that was another thing that just was, the book ended up being just kind of okay for me. I do want to read some more Kate Atkinson, but I don't own any of her other books, but this is the book from the longest TBR. So yeah, that project's actually going really, really well. And I'm reading a ton off my shelves, but that's the first one. The second one off of the oldest TBR pile is actually this one, The Watsons, Lady Susan, and Sandition. So this one has been on my shelf for, I don't even know how many years. I bought it for a Jane Austen July TBR and then never read it. I didn't love it. I know that this book is well received and a lot of people really enjoy Lady Susan. For me, I couldn't get past the letter component of it. I just am not a huge fan of an epistolary novel, and I just didn't connect with the characters. Maybe this is one I need to read another time. I don't know. I also know that some of this wasn't finished and it was published much later. So for me, it just didn't quite work. I wanted it to, and it just didn't. The other book that I had on my longest TBR was also a subscriber favorite book, which was The Gentleman in Moscow. I did not finish that book in February. I have finished it since then. I did it as a buddy read it the first part of March with my friend Angela, and I will talk about that one in my March wrap up. So yeah, that one was a carryover. My other subscriber favorite was actually Life and Hard Times by James Thurber, which is a nonfiction book, and I didn't think the book was a bad book at all. It wasn't as good as The 13 Clocks was for me. I really love that Thurber novel, but this one I didn't quite connect with quite as much. So I do appreciate everyone who gave me a subscriber favorite. I'm having so much fun reading those particular books. Outside of that, I ended up reading some books just from the library, which is wild. I had so many books. Why did I read more from the library? Oh, sorry, I missed a project. I also read a number of books from Margaret Pinard's Black History Month project, which was Black authors that also had YouTube channels. I read The Forgotten Girl. I read Blood Like Fate and Blood Like Magic. I have to say that Blood Like Fate and Blood Like Magic, I tore through those books. The first one sucked me in. It's a story of a young girl who is a witch, and she comes into her powers, and it is just so good. It is a little teenage angsty kind of a book. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? What should I do? Should I do this? Should I not do that? And so that did get a bit repetitive in places, but I could not put that series down. I just wanted to keep reading it. Yeah, so if you like a good witchy story, that one would be one I would definitely pick up. It is, like I said, a little bit younger for a younger audience, and there is a bit of teenage angst in it, but it is so, so good. I really want to read more by that particular author, which is Liselle Sansbury, I believe is the author name. I will put a book cover up here for you though, so you can see that as well. Definitely would recommend. After that, I kind of went on a weird little witchy vent. I went on a weird witchy tangent. I ended up picking up Wayward by Amelia Hart, which was a story, again, of witches, but told from 3 different generations' perspectives. And I loved all of the different generations' perspectives so much. I loved how they were kind of interconnected, but be aware, if you want to go read Wayward, that there is a lot of emotional and physical abuse in that book. So that can be a little bit hard to consume, but it was so, so good. I really did appreciate all three stories that were in there. And even though the timeline jumped from each person, each individual person's story was told in a linear fashion. So I wasn't having to jump story and timeline and everything all together, which really helped me connect with the different characters. There were a couple characters in it that I loved more than others, but it was a good read. After that, I ended up reading The Witches by Roald Dahl. I told you I went on a little bit of a witches tangent, and so I really did like this one as well. I was kind of surprised by what happened in this. I was expecting like a slightly different outcome, but it was a lot of fun as well in this. I can see why young adults, young children would really like Roald Dahl. Plus, it's full again of really great illustrations in here. I just always really like these particular books. So yeah, I ended up reading several witch books. I don't know why, but I did. I also read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This book, it was also a group read with Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, Gemma from Gemma Books, and Jack over at Spreadbook Bookjoy. And I believe those were all the right people. And only a couple of us finished this one as well, which is really fascinating. I did finish this one. This particular book is so confusing. You have a particular character who is inhabiting different hosts and kind of seeing the same event over and over and over again. And he can give himself clues if he remembers, but he doesn't know why he's there in the beginning. And you don't know who to trust. You don't know what's going on. You don't know all of these different pieces. It's very confusing in the beginning. I was okay with all the confusion, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what happened, who was who in this crazy book. It was the ending that threw me. Like, I think I wanted a different reason as to why all of it was happening. That part for me, just didn't quite hit the way I wanted it to. But I'm very happy that I was able to read this with a group because we were all puzzling about the same things and had different theories about who was doing what and why they were doing it. But I did end up finishing it. So that's just another great one off of my list. It didn't quite qualify for the longest on my TBR, but it really should because I've had it for a number of years. So the other thing that I had planned to read for the month of February was for the event Holmes is Where the Heart Is. And I have this bind up, of course, of Sherlock Holmes books. And I wanted to read a couple of stories out of this. I ended up reading one short story and that's it. I just didn't have enough time to go back and read more than that. I was kind of forcing myself to, and then just decided, I'm being silly and ended up putting it away. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm done. I'm not going to try and force it anymore. And yeah, it was okay. I love Sherlock Holmes, and I love the story that I read, which is the first one in it, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which has the introduction of Irene Adler in it. And I love her as a character in Holmes novels. I think she's amazing because she always kind of bests him. And I just think that's fascinating. So I want to read more. I just didn't have time in February. The last book that I'll touch briefly on was actually this one, Northwoods by Daniel Mason. This book has gotten a lot of really amazing critiques on it. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't give it a 5-star. There were certain storylines in this that I loved. I loved Alice and Mary. More of them and kind of what happened with them. There was one point that I was shocked. I actually messaged someone that I know who had read it and was like, this happened. And it took her a minute because it had been a bit since she had read the book. There's this random thing that I was telling her in a Voxer chat. And so it was a little bit confusing, I'm sure. But I loved their storyline. I think for me where I was having some challenges with it, where it was each individual kind of story, while connected, wasn't quite connected enough for me. I wanted a bit more across all of the different pieces. It feels a lot like a short story collection with some continuity across the different pieces. But for me, it was good. It was good, but it wasn't the 5-star read that I was anticipating it to be. So that is the other book that I did finish in the month of February. Like I said, a big month, but there wasn't really a 5-star read in this. which is so surprising to me. I'm really kind of shocked. The highest thing I gave was a 4-star to a different book. The 1001 Books didn't get over a 3-star. So yeah, I think in March I have a wide variety of other books that I am so excited to read. A couple of books I've already finished, and I'm hoping March has a couple of good 5-star reads, and it has a lot of potential to be an amazing, amazing reading month. So what was your favorite book that you read in February? I'd love to hear that. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.